Sun-deuk was a Korean fisherman who worked as a vendor in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, supplementing his income by fishing when business was slow. One day, he and his men were caught in a storm and ended up stranded on the shores of Ryukyu, which is now known as Okinawa. However, they faced a language barrier as none of them spoke Ryukyu, and the locals did not speak Korean, except for the nobles who traded with Korean nobles. Despite this, the Ryukyu people were kind and allowed Moon and his crew to live on their island for 3 years. During this time, Moon actively learned the Ryukyu language and eventually managed to reach the royal palace. The Ryukyu palace recognized Moon as a Korean and advised him and his men to board a ship that will travel between Korea and China, giving them the opportunity to go back to their homeland. The boat was supposed to travel north, but it encountered a storm and diverted south. Moon was among the shipwrecked survivors who became stranded in the Philippines. Korea and the Philippines did not have trade relations at that time, thus making the event significant as it marked the first recorded interaction between Korea, known as the Joseon Dynasty, and the Philippines, eventually leading to a cultural and economic exchange that would shape their future relationship. Moon and his men searched for shelter and discovered a village where some Chinese people lived. Despite the difficulties of adjusting to a new environment, Sun-deuk demonstrated remarkable resilience and embraced the local culture. Because he knew how to write a few Chinese characters, he used this skill to actively learn and master the Ilocano language, spoken by the indigenous people. Moon was eventually transferred to Macau, Nanjing, and Beijing before returning to Korea. Sun-deuk's linguistic skills became extremely valuable when a group of Filipino shipwreck survivors ended up in Korea. A few years before Moon came home, some Filipino fishermen were drifted to Jeju Island. They had difficulty communicating because they did not speak Korean and resembled neither Chinese, Ryukyu, nor Japanese. Koreans were initially unsure of their origin and tried to send them to China, but even Chinese couldn't figure out where they were from. The stranded fishermen resided in Jeju for several years, but struggled to learn the local language. All they could say was that they were from Macau, but no one understood what they meant. A few years later, Sun-deuk went to Jeju for business and noticed that these lost foreigners resembled Filipinos. So he spoke Filipino language, Ilocano, and found out that Macau was Macau. At least until 19th century, China was unaware of their languages and customs. That's interesting considering Macau has never been recorded as part of the Philippines. Sun-deuk's proficiency in Ilocano enabled him to communicate with the stranded Filipinos, offering them comfort, guidance, and a sense of belonging in their time of need. The stranded fishermen were happy that they could finally return home. Sun-deuk's story shows how human connection and empathy can overcome cultural barriers. His acts of kindness demonstrate the significance of solidarity and compassion, reminding us that even in the face of adversity, mutual understanding and support can bridge cultural boundaries, resulting in resilience and harmony that can inspire future generations. Moon collaborated with Korean scholar Jong Yak-jeon to write a book called Pyohaishimal, or The Beginning and the End of Floating Around on the Sea, which documents his journey. The book discusses cultural traditions from Luzon, Ryukyu, Macau, and China that are no longer practiced today, such as Ryukyu people using chopsticks to place food on their palms and eat using their hands rather than just putting the chopsticks in their mouths. Additionally, it explores the usefulness of the Philippine currency system, which influenced the renovation of Korean currency during the late Joseon period. Moon also included approximately 100 vocabulary words from 19th century Ryukyu and Ilocano, making the book valuable for linguistic studies today.